Welcome back, everybody, to Crime and Entertainment. We have here a returning guest, probably been the most reoccurring guest on this show. Please welcome Ignacio Esteban. Ignacio, how you doing, my friend?
Wade, man, good to be on. I think you're right. Number five, maybe
Yeah,
six. I don't know. They're
yeah,
getting up there.
it's up there, man, for sure. You're definitely the guy that's been on here the most, for sure, 100%.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome.
so you had sent me a link to your book, ATF Undercover. I got a chance to check that out. We're going to dive a little bit more. It's these books, I stress, because you write a lot of books. We've talked about it in the past. This is your longest book, correct?
Well, it is. And then all of a sudden I started combining them. And then I've gotten some really big ones now. So I put now together the most dangerous crime syndics of our time, which talks about all these times all together. So it's over almost like 350 pages.
Oh,
So
wow.
with all the books there, I did Killers and Tyrants, which is another one, 300 some pages. And so if you like long reads, you have that. If you like medium reads, you have that. And if you like short reads, you got that too. You can specialize. So now I've broken down, and of course it's an Audible now, and I'm now going to expand on these other ones too. So it's exciting.
First off, let me ask you, how's the numbers doing on the Audible? Because for someone like me, that is perfect because I'm a welder during the day. I've usually got my head under a hood, welding's going to town, and I can throw a earbud in my ear and listen to it all day long. So it works out perfect. What have you
Oh,
noticed the
great.
Audible numbers doing?
Doing good. They're doing really good. Man, I'm self-marketing. Like I said, I do it all.
Right.
I'm self-published,
Yep.
right? I do my own writing, I do my own editing, I do my own marketing. So I wear many hats, just like I was as an investigator. I was undercover, the case agent, did my own property. I just applied that to what I'm doing with this, and now I'm working on also screenplays, which I got done. Working with production companies, and hopefully you can see the poster behind me. I think I've had it before, ATF Undercover, which is really cool. And I want to give a shout out. You tell me what you think. I had a professional voice actor help me out named Sean Milo. He's been doing it for years. I think he did a really good job, and he's working on my other books as we speak. So I'm hoping, and this is it's going to be almost a 7 hour listen. The most dangerous crime syndicate of our time, almost 7 hours, and I think it's going to be really, really popular because it's going to be from the one percenters. You're going to have the Italian mafia. You're going to have Mexican cartels, Yakuza, you're going to have a array of different ones you can listen to, which I put together for those who really want to read a lot. Say, and the price, all my books are under $10. So those books are $9.99. The lesser ones are going to be cheaper, obviously. But if you're one of those ones who want to read a lot, you got that too now.
Right.
So, and then if you want to listen a lot, you got that too now. So I'm just hitting it all,
There
man.
you go. That's what you got to do, man. You got to be diverse. You got to put it out there. Just like with a podcast, I put everything up on YouTube for those people that are
Mhm.
visual and want to watch it. And I also put everything on audio side for those people that are just listeners. So you have to be able to hit all the markets. So you're doing the right
That's true.
thing. Um,
That's true.
in ATF Undercover, I mean, this book is roughly, I think, around an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. So
Yes.
we're going to kind of skim over it just a little bit to give some people a little bit of a understanding of what all they can find in this book. Obviously, we want them to go grab it and listen to it in full for themselves. But it kind of starts out with you in the academy. Kind of give us a little overview, real quick overview of what that was like going into there. I know in one of those situations you were dealing with a guy that was I guess you want to just call plain out racist, but what was your
Oh,
experiences?
yeah, that was after, yeah, the academy, when I graduated. But the academy, yeah, for ATF, same where I did with customs. And I think those know who've seen the shows before that book I almost called The Accidental Agent. I transitioned from almost going to law school to end up getting picked up by customs in Miami. And I give a lot of credit, believe it or not. This is a funny story. I don't know if I said this show. I've done so many. I think I've done now close to 100 shows already, which is
Wow.
crazy. Yeah,
And I was your
Windows.
first.
You're my first. I wanted people to know that I was first. And you saw my stuff out there. I saw you did Jay Dobbins, and you have some other big name. Tom's, oh, rest in peace, Tom Sizemore.
Yes.
Right. I enjoyed that show, and I saw you had some big names, and I put some of my stuff out there. You like the one percenter stuff, my ATF Undercover. If you want to do the show, I did it, and we've done quite a few, and it's just all international. I've
Yeah.
been in Australia, Thomas Berryman, Steve Gillen out of London, which we're working on with a screenplay, all over the country. It's fascinating. I never thought, well, as an ATF headquarters, I'll be doing all this stuff, but I've enjoyed it, man. It's been pretty cool, and who knows where else is going. I know you've been successful. You've had some pretty cool adventures to yourself,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, what these kind of things, man, they open the door for, like you said, so many different partnerships and avenues of ways to tell stories. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to people all across the board on both sides of law enforcement. I've had you on, I've had drug smugglers on, and it's good to get
Yes.
both sides of the coin to get how you guys tried to stop it, and those guys tried to get around you trying to stop it, and that's what it's all about. I think people want to know both sides of the coin because that's all this has been throughout history is cat and mouse with
Yes.
drug the drug smugglers, the drug dealers, and then law enforcement. I mean, it's just been a huge game of cat and mouse. By and large, which y'all are winning. There's very few, as we've talked about in the past, that whether it be crime family, motorcycle gangs, whatever. There's very few that just ride off into the sunset and retirement and kind of disappear. But most of them wind up either dead or in jail.
Yes. It's not something, and you listen to some of these guys. I've listened to some of them also, which I do too. And I ask sometimes questions, and I've seen the shows. And I send, comments. And I said, "Hey, do you have any regrets? What did you think?" And a lot of them, not to mention names, but a lot of them say, I wish I would have known better that you can make money, you can get respect without going into that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was different times, obviously, this happened, back in the '60s and stuff like that. It wasn't all the information we have now. And of course, I had a book also, which I incorporate the stuff from the Italian mafia, La Cosa Nostra, and the cartels together, which is the fall of the mafia and the rise of the Mexican cartels. So if you just want to focus, so that's also on my books too. So I put a lot of these, and I'm going to start doing, like I said, audibles on all of this. And me and Sean Milo will have this together. So it is going to be a lot of content out there, a lot of well-researched stuff that you can enjoy. But back to your question about the academy, it was at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. That's in Glencoe, Georgia. That's in Southeast near, if you want to know where's that's at, it's near like St. Simon, near Jekyll Island, Brunswick, Georgia, pretty much out there. And I went there for customs. And I also then for ATF, for the basic school, and for ATF, which is the basic criminal investigative school, and for that. And it is like a big university campus with a police setting,
Right.
because you're there in a police academy. So that sets a feel I can give. It used to be a Navy base, and they converted years later into what it is now. And you have everybody there from ATF is there, marshals were there. At the time, you had Border Patrol. So you see the guys marching a lot in green, and those guys were really intense out there, doing the push-up stuff. And then you have other groups. So it's a lot of people there, and you have a cafeteria, you're training, you're working, and people get bounced. So if you can't shoot, you end up failing your test, you go home. And there was a job that you were making six figures and you lost. And you see people sometimes, tears coming down their eyes, it didn't work out for them. It just wasn't meant to be. So there's that pressure there, financial pressure. And then you have the pressure dealing with, bosses. You deal with your colleagues, could be a pain in the ass, right? And you have the pressure from the job itself. So there's always that pressure from day one getting there. So it's fascinating. And I talk about that. And you're right. I dealt with some assholes, right? I dealt with people who were, a guy who was my training officer. So nothing's worse where you come from customs, you did 5 years, you go to Tampa, and you were a guy that's kind of anti-Hispanic a little bit, man. He kind of, used some derogatory terms, and I didn't go with it, even though I was younger, but I still learned something from my parents that without respect, you have nothing. Right. So you got to stand up for yourself all the time. You can't ever let somebody step, because once they step on you in life, they'll do it again. So right from the beginning, you got to stop that. And then you have to put it in their place. And they got a little ugly and heated. And then I went to another group. And that's why I think, I mentioned my book. I met my mentor and good friend, the bullet catcher, the Puerto Rican bullet catcher. Mm-hmm. And an unbelievable story there.
Yeah, elaborate on that a little bit, because like when I listen to some of these books, it's like I want to ask questions, but I forget I'm not doing a podcast, so I can't really stop them and ask a question. Elaborate on that a little bit. That went in his gun? You mean like in the barrel, or how did that happen?
Yes, yeah. This is back, and you can look it up. It happened back in the you can look it up. But he did a show when he retired with Ripley's Believe It or Not about it, and some local broadcasters later. And it was happened in 1987, Westland Mall in Hialeah. They're doing a drug bust, and he's with the Hialeah SWAT team, police department. And the car's parked up here. He's coming in the front. The SWAT team's in the back, and the bad guy opens up on him. It's one shot. He takes out his, and the round goes into his barrel. And he keeps on trying to pull the trigger, but nothing's happening because it's plugged. nothing's happening. He's lucky the guy didn't keep on opening fire on him, but
Yeah.
the guys in the back, the Hialeah team, SWAT team, they opened fire on him, and they took care of that guy.
So how
Shot once in a million.
where did that
He
bullet
he had
come out and landed in his gun?
yeah, he had a SIG 9 millimeter, and he had a SIG 9 millimeter, and it just went boom, just like that.
Wow.
You ever seen that movie? I think we talked about that. What was that movie? Uh, God, not the Matrix, but it's one similar with the
Face Off that happened.
Face Off. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
when Travolta and Cage are like they're standing like with their backs to the wall talking, they both spin out and shooting the bullets meet each other.
Yeah, yeah.
That's actually what I kind of had in mind whenever you were telling, or they were telling that story in the narration. But I was just like, man, that's
You get one. You're not gonna be able to keep on catching them. That's for sure.
right. Yeah, you can't keep on doing it.
Just think about where your gun is right here, right? Where's that going to if there's a gun's not there? Yeah,
Right
right
into your
there.
face, more than likely.
Man, talking about having, yeah, I think that's his birthday. I already said that, man. That was your birthday right there. That's the
Yeah,
day you got reborn. That's your birthday from now on, man. So that's the kind of stuff. It's unbelievable. You know, you go law enforcement, kind of things you get involved, people you're meeting with, almost just like in the podcast world we're in.
yeah.
It's amazing the people I've met, you know, around the world and stuff, which is, you know, pretty, and their life stories, which is fascinating, and content. So yeah, that was a changing experience, because then I talk about how I became an undercover, right?
Right.
How that had an impact on me. I changed my look. I grew my hair out. I had a big beard. I think you've seen some of the pictures out there.
Dude, when I
Yeah.
started seeing some of those pictures, I didn't even realize that was you because I'm used to seeing you now. You know how I met you
Right.
when we originally met. I was like, that's him. So I
Yeah.
had to go add some onto some of the clips we had from the past shows. And see, not only that was I liked how you incorporated, you know, the realism. I think people just look at people as, undercover they forget that you have lives, you have family lives.
Yes.
You talk about, your father getting sick and how much that,
Yes.
took a toll on you. Tell us a little bit about that because your father, from everything that you described, sounded like a great man.
Yes. Yes. I appreciate that. Yes. 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 He was. Yes, he was. And he died tragically from pancreatic cancer, and that's no joke. And he was diagnosed with stage 4, and this is back in 2000. I said I call it like from Dickens. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. So
Right.
in late 2006, I just got married. My wife in 3 years, and we had come back from Spain. We went to the Canary Islands and Madrid, and then we came back, and it's like early 2007, and my dad's not feeling good. And he's a good back from my father. He's in his mid 60s, a very healthy man, didn't smoke, didn't drink much. He was an avid cyclist, right? He was just a good guy. But, it's just like anything else, be proactive with your health. And if you skip a year or two from doing a physical blood work, you never know. Those could be the years. So I always say be proactive with your health. Try to find out, like anything like colonoscopy. I'm doing that all, when doctors tells you, because you don't want to be the one that doesn't do it, or any other procedures you can, because it could save your life. There's no doubt about it. And he got diagnosed because he's having severe back issues. He couldn't sleep, couldn't lay down. He said, what's going on? I said, let me see Mandy, a chiropractor. He never thought in his wildest dreams that he'll be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And back then, it's not like Alex Trebek, who remember, he had it recently, and he was on jeopardy right to the end, right? Yeah, his situation deteriorated extremely, extremely quickly. The treatment there, the cure is worse than the disease, because the chemo was horrible, had a bad impact on him, and within like 7-8 months, he passed away. So you go from a really healthy person, and your life just goes just like that. So it's really scary stuff. It had an impact on me because I was working in Tampa, just got recently married. My wife's up there. I'm going back and forth helping my mom. She's dealing with that. That has an amazing, unbelievable impact on her and my sister and everything else. So really hard for the family. So when he passes, you got to make a decision. What are you going to do with your life? And he said, I threw myself into the work, and that helped me a lot. So I just became the undercover and grew up the beard, the hair, and really threw myself into making cases.
And you done, like you said, you mentioned Tampa. You spent a little time in Tampa and also Miami. Which one was, I would say, more dangerous out of those two?
Yeah, you never know. They both have really bad areas. I mean, really bad areas, big pockets. You go South St. Pete is really bad. You have really bad pockets in Tampa, Pasco County. I worked a lot, and I give you a quick example so you can see today you have everything in Pasco. That's just north of Tampa and Hillsborough, right? And I worked in there a lot, 12 years. I did a lot of undercover work there, but you had everything between bikers, you had gang members, armed drug dealers, you have tons of meth labs everywhere. I mean, it was just ripe with everything, what you wanted, a nice variety of things. And just recently, I don't know if you saw this in the news, this is unbelievable. You had in Holiday, which is out there in West Pasco County, you had this MS-13 member allegedly killed this Uber Eats driver. I don't know if you saw that. He's texting
Yeah.
his wife. He's saying, "Hey, the last one I'm going in." He goes in there. I guess he gets thumped, killed, dismembered, and he's putting him in the body bags and out the door to be picked up by the trash. That's the area I was worried. A lot of so,
And did they
it's
figure out a
everywhere.
reason why he did that? I remember seeing that in the news not too long ago.
That's unbelievable. You haven't seen that? You look that up. This
Yeah.
MS-13 driver killing the Uber Eats driver, and I'm not sure what else he did to the guy, but he did some house of horrors on him.
Was it for any specific reason, initiation? He's pissed off. I mean, did they ever figure out why he did it?
Psychopath, man. A lot of these MS-13 members, remember, I'm looking for body counts. I wrote a book about that. The savagery and brutality of MS-13. And, Mara Salvatrucha, these guys are about, and the Trump administration wanted to deem them a domestic terrorist organization because it's not about the money with some of these guys. It's about the body count. They're psychopaths. To me, they're like serial killers because they enjoy the kill, almost like a Dahmer or Bundy who just really gets off on this. Some of these guys really like killing people, and then they want to get rid of the body, and they're good at dismembering, and they're good at breaking it apart because no body, no case, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they want to get rid of the body.
Always been what they say. My daughter she recently moved out to Seattle, and she's actually coming home here soon. She's graduating, and she was telling my wife that she might pick up a side job like Uber Eats or something like that. And then I happened to be reading about the case, and my wife's like, "Yeah, hell no, she's not driving." And I'm like, "Well, it's a different part of town, but I mean, yeah, it makes you think, man. You never know who you're going to be. You think how vulnerable people are like that nowadays. Uber Eats, Door Dashers, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers. I mean, you're getting in the car with people that you really have no idea who they are. And that goes both ways, as the driver and as the passenger. You don't know what that driver's been doing. I mean, I do know they check background checks, but that doesn't mean that, how many of us have ordered an Uber and been half lit coming out of a bar or something like that? You're not paying no attention. You might see the car and see, okay, the car matches it. You're not paying attention to that driver's face. I mean, and that was a big deal when it happened down here in Columbia, South Carolina, when that girl left the 5 Points area and got into a car that she assumed was her driver. And then she was found severely stabbed, I think over 100 some odd times, the day later. And they had her on video camera getting into the car that she assumed was her Uber driver. So it's really, it's, even though Uber, I think, is a great thing, I think it's probably cut down on a lot of DUIs and things like that.
True.
You do have to watch yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you damned you are, damned if you don't. If you don't, you get DUI, right? And you get an accident. And if you do that, you might get the back. I mean, it's just unbelievable what we see. I mean, and you look at okay, say, okay, I'm not taking that. I'm gonna take the public. Let's say you're New York City. I'm gonna take the subway. Well, look at that poor guy. He got chokehold, and the passenger is trying to save him, but the guy is crazy, and he kills that 30-year-old kid, right? 30-year-old guy. He chokehold. You see the video on that guy. The video is really disturbing. So.
Yeah, and my mom always everywhere. Like, you got to be careful when you go down to New York. I mean, she's right. I mean, there's some crazy stuff goes down on that subway, man. You got to, you just have to keep your wits about you and keep your your eyes open. Can't really, I mean, you can't go through life scared to death because you'll never enjoy life. But at the same time, you got to be aware of your surroundings. And I've been in many different places the last few months. I've been lucky enough to do a lot of traveling. I've been to New York a couple of times. I've been to Tampa, Vegas, and I mean, I've hopped in Uber drivers and I've had great conversations with great people. Luckily, I've not run into anybody that's wanted to chop me up into little pieces, but you just
did you go on the subway system? Did you go on the subway?
New York? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've got that pretty much nailed down now. I had a little rough time because when I first went back for the first time last year, that was the first time I went in probably 10 years. So I didn't remember anything about it, but I pretty much got it down now.
Yeah, it's just the worst ones, people who take the wrong one and they end up in a really bad area.
Yeah, yeah.
And that gets people's attention.
That can help you. Like I think it was a City Mapper app. is pretty good. You can put in your destination and it will tell you the exact trains you need to take and then where
That's
you
good.
need to
That
walk
helps. I didn't
to.
have that when I was
All that.
started. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
I didn't
You got to
either.
be good at maps. I didn't have
Yeah.
that either.
Yeah, I didn't have none of that. When me and my wife visited the first time, it was trial and error, man. And we wound up getting separated. The door closed on us. It was,
Oh wow, that's
yeah,
crazy.
she still breaks my balls about us to this day. Like it was nighttime and
Oh no.
we walked down the wrong side of the street. So I didn't realize that we were actually going the opposite way because it'll say, one way will be uptown, the other one will be downtown. But if you don't know it, then you're going the wrong way. And so I couldn't understand what the guy was saying. Whenever he would stop, he would say, "This is so and so street" or whatever. I couldn't
Yeah.
understand him. And it was late. It's probably like 12:30. And so I'm like, look, there's a map on the subway, like on the wall. So I'm like, all right, well, next stop, I'm gonna just step out, read the name on the wall. If it's this, then we got to get up and go to the other side. If it's this, then we're going the right way. And as soon as I stepped out, like I don't know how I didn't damn near close my foot in the door. I hear that shh, and I
Oh
spin
no.
around, and like it's the glass and her, and I mean, my mouth's just like, and it's and she's
Yeah.
gone.
You're like,
I mean,
wow.
thank God we had cell phones and we were able to get back in touch with each other and find each other because I don't even think I knew where the hotel was that we stayed at. Like I didn't know the name of it. Like we had checked our bags and then left. So that was like the first thing we were going back
That's
to. That would have been the second. I didn't even know where hotel we were at. It
yeah.
was crazy. But yeah,
No, subway system is absolutely nuts, and it's just getting crazier and crazier shootouts and stabbings because they don't let people stay armed, right?
yeah,
So the average can't be armed, but these gangsters, these bad people are armed,
yeah,
and that's what makes it. And they know they can victimize people and they can take advantage of it, and that's the big problem. That's why you're seeing a big escape from New York,
yeah,
and you're seeing people coming to Florida. They come to other places. They just want out between COVID policies that failed and this stuff going on, violence. It is just escape and it's everything else. I just hope, I don't think it happened in Florida. I think DeSantis had a huge red wave that they don't bring the liberal policies with them.
yeah.
It failed for a reason. Don't bring it to other places and make it worse. And that's what people hopefully you learned that it didn't work. You left for a reason. Hopefully you realize why. And that's what you hope people study for. And now we talk a lot of politics before in other shows. So, and I've written also political books too. So it's not just true crime books, but political books also out there.
Yeah, you can get
Tyrants
lost going down
and
some of those
killers.
rabbit holes.
And I think it's one and the same.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we talked a little bit about your time in Tampa and Miami as undercover. Your headquarter years. What do you
Yeah.
compare like your headquarter years compared to your undercover years? Like, I mean, did you miss being undercover?
I did because I really enjoyed doing the buys, put people in jail. But I was already at almost 19 years, 18 years, right? And I just needed a change. And so I promoted, and that was a process within itself, to go through the panel interviews and where you want to go. And ended up picked up after about a year in ATF headquarters. And then it was like, I got really close with the number one in command for the central region. I was helping him with the most difficult cases, the most sensitive cases that was out there. And it was really fascinating seeing like what's behind the curtain and helping the command staff give them briefings on sensitive investigations. So that was interesting.
And it seemed like they kind of took care of you as far as helping move and financing your moves and everything like that.
That one they finally did, yeah, because when I moved from Tampa to Miami, that was on my dime. And that was kind of messed up, the whole situation there, butting heads and some of the stuff, that happened in Tampa. And like I said, it's the bad guys, I've always said was the easy part for me
yeah,
because criminals just are criminals. But the backstabbing, the problems with the prosecutors, the problems we have with managers, supervisors, nothing worse than put a big case together and you get a lame prosecutor and the case goes down the toilet.
yeah.
That is frustrating and as heck. That's a morale crusher there. So it's a lot of interesting and good stories. I think you saw what was your take? What were some of the stories that caught your any undercover stories that you liked?
I like the one you were talking about where you had to get in the car with the guy. Wasn't he changing the location or something like that? He gave you the blow as soon as you got in the car. I can't remember his name. I'm horrible because I listen to so much shit during the day, but I want to say
Yeah,
it was your Miami one.
I remember the one, and he didn't have the stuff in the trailer. Was that the one with the trailer?
Yes. That one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting one there. Yeah, that happened back in like 2009, and it happened in Pasco County because I worked a lot in Pasco County. I even had an undercover apartment that was wired up with video and sound, and I think I mentioned the guy Chino with him too. But this guy, he was a prolific drug trafficker, and all the names and everything in the book. And he hopped in with me, and we met him a location. He said, "No, the guns are going to be," and it's about a $3,000 deal for an AK-47 with a 75 round drum, 2 Glocks, and about almost an ounce of crystal meth. All right, so we're looking for that kind of deal. First time, I've dealt with him briefly before, but this first time we're going to do this kind of heavy deal. And first thing he does when he's in a truck, I'm in a truck. We're driving to the location. It's going to be a trailer in a shady area in that neck of the woods. He's looking at my glove box, and I said, "Dude, what are you doing there, bro?" And I said, I'm just checking here, man. Don't be doing that shit. What are you doing?" So we go to the location there, and he says, "Okay, the stuff's not here." He has a backpack on, which I found odd. And he says, "Hey, let me go inside the trailer." He introduces me to some other guys, Hispanic, Mexican guys. And we talk a little bit and everything else. And he goes back in the trailer and he says, "Hey, they have the stuff in there, but they want you to come in there." And I said, "No, you just, get a towel, whatever, and bring it out, meet me in the truck." Right. And he comes out, he says to me, "Well, why don't you give me the money and I'll go get it for you?" I said, "No, I'm not doing that either." Because I know if I give him the money, that money's walking away with all those guys. Because I can see in the corner from the trailer where he can't see that there's guys still coming in on the backside of the trailer, going in there. So my instincts tell me something's going on in there. Either they're gonna, rip, kill me, whatever. I said, "I'm not doing that." I said, "You got 5 minutes. If not, I'm out of here." So 5 minutes later, a Honda Odyssey pulls up, and a guy pops up with the AK-47 and a 75 round drum, and they sell it to me. And then he pulls out his backpack, 2 Glock pistols, and the crystal meth in there, and I pay for that. And I said, "See, dude, next time I don't want to meet anybody. You have it ready because I didn't want to do the circus, and when we're done." And he understood that, and he ended up getting like over 20 years. He got over 20
You
years.
handed out a lot of time for the ones that you busted. I mean, a lot of those guys you took off the street for a long time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's again.
Yes, I did. I feel proud that Pasco County, northern Tampa. I worked a lot in those areas. I worked a lot in Broward County, in South Florida, in Dade County, and I put a lot of guys for a significant amount of time. A lot of what does ATF do? Maybe some of the audience members don't know what ATF is. Of course, stuff for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. That you deal with, repeat violent offenders. I always make this joke, which it used to be. Elliot Ness was a legacy ATF agent, right? Bureau of Prohibition. It was a big A back in the 20s, right? Take down Al Capone, but it's now a small A for alcohol, a small T for tobacco diversion, because there's still some cigarette case. I know South Carolina, North Carolina, very big, buying cigarettes, going up north. That's where you can really make a lot of money. You pack up the cars and people get busted because they don't get a lot of time. Huge F for firearms and immediate E for explosives. But that's how we work a lot.
On that for just a minute, because if people have ever watched Goodfellas or The Sopranos, or they've even made reference to it in the movie Heat, people got caught extraditing cigarettes. They'll come down here to North and South Carolina and then go back up there. Explain why they do that and where there's money to be made in that for people that may not know.
Yeah, taxes. New York City has a lot of taxes, right? And the Carolinas have very little taxes with cigarettes. So it's a lot cheaper to buy those cartons in those states, and sell it for profit. And you can sell on the black market up there. There's a lot of those mom and pop stores that will take it. You ever see the Eddie Murphy movie? I forgot which one. He has the cigarettes in the back. He's an undercover Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah. Beverly Hills Cop.
He had a cigarette bust right there. Yeah, that's been going on for years and years. People make a lot of money, and it's considered almost like a white collar because you're not going to get a lot of time for that.
Right.
But there's a lot of issues. Now you're taking a risk, obviously. The bigger the load, the more. And some of them take it up to the reservations up near northern New York, right? On the border with Canada. So you see a lot of issues with that. Anywhere you can make that kind of money, they do it. And they, it's not uncommon to go to some of these big stores like Costco, load up your truck, right? And off you go, because you're going to make more money because they save all the money on taxes they got to pay.
So New York City, I remember atrocious. There was a specific episode in The Sopranos where Tony had sent Christopher to get cigarettes from North Carolina. They brought him back, and then somebody called him, and he said one of the guys at one of the bodegas got busted for selling the cigarette cartons without the tax stamps on them. So they have to put a tax stamp on them as if
Sure,
they
New
were
York State.
bought in New York.
That's right. That's right. And some people sell it without the stamps, and that's risky too. And some
That's
people
what
get
they
so
were
good
doing
at
in
it, and some get so good at it, they can do counterfeit stamps. They have it all set up where they can do a counterfeit stamp for New York State. So it depends how good and sophisticated the group you're working with. And
Okay.
that's how much more money they're going to be making. So imagine that you're paying a fraction down south and you're going to make it double, triple your money up in New York or other places,
Right. If
you
you're
know,
coming down
where
here
they
and
have.
buying them wholesale from somebody, I mean, if anybody that's ever lived here and traveled to New York and tried to buy whatever you buy down here, you're noticeably
Oh,
paying a $3 or $4 increase. So
yeah.
you got to figure if you're coming down here and buying wholesale and traveling them up there, there is a lot of money to be made in that market. So yeah,
Yeah. And there's also risk too. You don't want to be a convicted felon doing it either. It's
right.
never risky.
That's where it runs into is like, do you want to risk being that, you know, for I don't know how a load, if you just say a van load of cigarettes, I mean, you can't be talking about enough money to risk, a felony being on your record. I wouldn't think not that much.
No, no. Some guys get greedy. You know how it is. You can get away with anything once, but they start seeing the easy money. It's like firearms trafficking. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. You know, Florida, it's a lot easier to buy a lot of guns, right? You don't have to have permits, registration, nothing. And they double or triple the money up in, the Northeast, the blue states, where they make it impossible for the average person to buy any guns, right? They don't want FFLs. They don't want federal firearms licensees out there. So that is part of the cases. I think I talked in the book. You saw that with the cases working where, I started working this one case where it was a guy from Puerto Rico who was a FedEx employee, dirty. He gets popped trafficking guns in Puerto Rico. He gets convicted, right? Waiting sentencing, comes back to Tampa in Wesley Chapel area in Pasco. And and like I said, you have a good CI and had a lot of good informants. It's golden. They can, like I said, make or break your cases, but once they vouch for you and they're good, then you're set and you go anywhere. And this guy was already a convicted felon, right? And he's going to the gun shows, the flea markets. He's asking what I'm looking for. I'm going to get this for you. And I bought a few more times, and we took him down and buy bust. And with a buy bust, I think it had like at least 10 firearms, and even had Thompson gun with a 75 round drum in it. I mean, and this guy's a convicted felon, and he doesn't give a crap who I am. And I'm portraying myself. I don't be trafficking down south, and they don't care. That's how crazy it is, and that's within Florida. Imagine up there, huh? When it goes up.
Yeah, that's a lot of money to be made in arms trafficking, man. Too. I mean, if anybody's
Yes.
ever watched TV shows such as like Sons of Anarchy, I mean, that's what they made their living off
Mhm.
of was buying guns wholesale, assembling, and then turn around and selling retail. So there's a lot of money in those guns.
Yeah, and the shame. And I talked my book, and that, and the case was interesting because it went from that guy, and then it went to a high school teacher, right, who worked in Citrus County. He was a high school teacher, right? He's there, and he was a major prolific firearms trafficker. When I busted him, he had almost 40 guns I took down with boxes of identical make and model Glock pistols. And then after that, his source was a dirty federal firearms licensee in the Panhandle, which I met with him, and he was telling me how he cooked his books with acquisition disposition books. How he would put there in the books that he wouldn't put it all in there. I mean, it's just amazing the characters and all different kinds. One was Puerto Rican, one guy was from Citrus County, and the other guy was in his mid-50s. But none of them, except for the guy from FedEx, he did get about 5 years because of his felony. But if you have no felony and you just start firing or cigarette trafficking, you get a slap in the wrist,
Yeah.
probation. The only thing you do get a lot with cigarette trafficking in our side is that we get to seize the conveyance, and it's almost like money laundering. You get to trace the proceeds and start seizing some of the proceeds. So you will lose your assets if you're a cigarette trafficker, like a drug trafficker.
Yeah.
At least drug trafficking, you get time. Cigarette trafficking, you don't get time, but you're going to lose the fruits of your labor.
Yeah. Interesting stuff, man, for sure. And that can all be found, like we said, in your book,
Yeah.
ATF Undercover. So definitely we'll put a link to it in the show notes of this episode. I encourage everyone to go out and check it out. It's a real quick read. If you're in the gym
And listen.
working out or something. Yeah, real quick listen as well now with on Audible. That's
Mhm.
definitely better for guys like me. So anybody that's in the gym, working out, if you want something to just kind of help the time go by, that's definitely something you need to check out. One of the things that I wanted to touch on here with you today is you wrote a few books here lately about cults and mass
Yeah.
murders is really what it boils down to. tell us some of the books you've gotten pumped out about them, and we'll dive into each of them kind of here next a little bit.
Yeah. I have Jim Jones, right? Drinking the Kool-Aid, his crazy suicidal revolution. Timothy McVeigh, right? The face of domestic terrorism, and he's tied in with David Koresh with the French Davidians, which is also a cult. And then I have how dangerous of a cult are they? Scientology, and pretty much a cover there with L. Ron Hubbard, Lafayette Run Hubbard. So different kinds of cults. I always want one to write a book also on the one with the guys who were dressed all black with the Nike outfits that died with Haley's Comet coming over. Remember those guys?
Vaguely, I remember something about the all Nike outfits. What was they called?
Yeah, I remember the name top of my head, but they were there, and they have also. It's just like amazing in this country how many cults and what they happen and everything else. But
I mean, even going
they're
back as
there.
far as like the cult that Charles Manson, all those women that he had up under him to
Yes,
commit
it's
these
mind
murders.
control. Lot of mind control. Mind control. If you want, we can hit Jim Jones. He's fascinating. I know we've talked about him.
Yeah, let's do Jim, man, because I don't know if we've talked about him on this show, but I mean, fascinating guy. If anybody remembers, that's the one basically one of the biggest mass suicides in history when he had everybody drink the Kool-Aid.
I call it mass murder.
Yeah,
Yeah, I call it mass
essentially
murder.
that is what it is. And there's audio out there that you can hear when all this is going down,
Yes.
of the people drinking this stuff and people literally dying. I mean, it is crazy. Tell us a little bit about the origins of Jim Jones, and
Yeah.
how he all began, and what started this whole movement.
Yeah, I'll start that. But if you haven't heard it, listen to the death tape. He recorded 45-minute audio. If you have, it's out there. And then you'll see the video, and I'll talk about his entourage that he kills and assassinates, including the Congressman Leo Ryan. But his assistant survives, and she played dead for 24 hours on the tarmac there, and she was shot 5 times. And she later becomes the congressperson representative from his district years later. She will win the office, but she laid there, played dead for 24 hours, and was saved by the army that finally made it. It took them a while to get out there and see what happened. But she was one of the lucky ones to survive the. You know, you had NBC News out there. And I'm going to give you a little background, everybody. But these were big names at the time, and I thought in his mind he made a big mistake. But I'll talk about that where he got there. And it wasn't. It ended up not being Kool-Aid they drank. It was another brand, but it wasn't Kool-Aid. But Kool-Aid got stuck with it.
Unfortunately
Cyanide.
for them.
It was flavored cyanide that they were forced to take and got injected. So who is this guy Jim Jones? He came from abject poverty in Indiana. His father was a World War I veteran, severely disabled from the war. And people know the Battle of the Trenches was absolutely brutal out there in Europe, and he suffered a lot from those chemical attacks. You know how those chemical attacks, and he was severely asthmatic and severely bronchitis, and he couldn't provide for his family. So he's the only child there, and during the Depression, they lost their home, and the family chipped in and got him a shack in Indiana, I think near Lynn, Indiana. It's in my book, and they couldn't have running water. They didn't have plumbing. They didn't have anything. It was just a shack, right? So he didn't have. I think he had one pair of clothes that he wore all the time. He was half naked in the town all the time. So this is where he goes from that, right? Just like the cartels who come from abject poverty, right? Something in some people, and he becomes very rich with People's Temple, very rich in what he sets up. So he goes from that world to a whole different world. How did he get there from that? He's a very smart guy. He's a student also, but he sees ministry at a young age as a way to make a lot of money, and he kind of likes having the power and how much importance he's given. Because remember, he's not giving much importance right now, right? So someone like him wants that importance, and he takes to it, and he grows into it. A big difference between him and his father was part of the Ku Klux Klan in Indiana, and Jones kind of had a lot of friends that were black, African Americans, and his father didn't care for that. So he kind of wanted to start his church, and he didn't like segregation. He wanted to mix his church, the congregation, right? So it kind of irked people the wrong way, and him and his wife will become the first family to ever adopt a black child in Indiana. So he became a big move for civil rights. So if he would have died in the 50s and 60s, I think he would have been a civil rights hero, to be honest with you. But it changes badly it changes badly for Jim Jones, because he goes to San Francisco. he starts at the People's Temple out there, and then it becomes more of a cult because then he's looking for they have turn on their income. This is the big problem. When people now have to give everything they have to them and he's make all the decisions, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. And he takes control there and he spreads out there. But then allegedly, when we have this kind of power, abuses happen. He's being accused of abusing, physically abusing, raping, not only men and women, but also men. So he's involved in that stuff.
Yeah, I was
It
gonna
gets
say I
ugly.
had heard there was a documentary that I watched where a guy was saying that like the first time he met him, he come up, he spoke to him, and then not to be too candor, but basically he told him if he felt the need that he would basically take care of him for him if you know what I mean. You can read between the lines there,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
basically saying that he would openly do a homosexual act with him. So he was a weird cat.
Yeah, he definitely went both ways. There's nowhere around that because he was married, he had a wife, and he had a family. And but he would also adopt, like I said, not only a black child in Indiana, but also in California and San Francisco, Korean children. So he called it his rainbow family. He had a rainbow family. So he had two worlds. He had his world that appears good, but at the end, he has no problem killing his children and grandchildren with this mass suicide. So a lot of abuses. He gets paranoid, but he becomes also very political in San Francisco. He gets involved in the whole San Francisco political scene. He helps the mayor win an election in '76. You have Walter Mondale with the vice president with Jimmy Carter. They come in there and they need, because Reagan was governor, little politics here of California back in that time, and he's very popular. It kind of was almost like a red state, right? But Ford wasn't very popular,
Right.
and he helps them take that region, which helps them take California, which then helps Carter win. So remember that he is involved politically with a lot of important people that would look later and say, "Man, I don't really know that guy that well." No, they did know the guy that well, and he was very political, and he did help Carter, and he did help these guys, and they looked the other way because you know what he ended up becoming? He ended up becoming a hardcore Marxist-Leninist communist. This guy was a hardcore communist, very anti-American, anti-capitalist, and he's afraid that there's going to be a mass war between America and the Soviet Union. So he needs to start finding a new place to take his constituents or his congregation down. He wanted to go to Brazil, but he ends up going to Guyana because Guyana ends up being, which is in South America. You guys don't know, Guyana is in South America between Brazil and Venezuela in the southeast. Very small country, English speaking. It's not Spanish speaking or Portuguese because it used to be an English colony, a British colony, and it went very communist, very socialist, to say. So it fit everything he liked. He pretty much wanted to be a Fidel Castro because once he set everything up in Guyana, and he got about 1,000 people to go down there, which is impressive, right? They turn over their assets, they turn over their money. They say his People's Temple was worth over 10, 15 million, which is like 40 million today. Not bad for a guy who went abject poverty to over $20 million.
Ain't
Very
kidding.
impressive.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, because he took advantage, and none of these people in the congregation were disenfranchised minorities, right? Disenfranchised minorities. A lot of them didn't have a great education. He preyed on that. He preyed on the involvement, looking for spiritual help and guidance, and that's not what he was there for. He ended up using it because these camps end up becoming work camps because they give him a little shack. He feeds them like a bowl of rice, maybe some beans, but him and his crew, they eat well. They eat well. He even goes to Cuba to meet with Fidel Castro because he wants to be another Castro, pretty
Yeah.
much. And he admires Castro. He talks to Castro. He wants it. He even has Soviet officials visit the camp and say, this is the ideal Marxist type of situation, communal living. Give me a break. And he has them brainwashed with anti-American propaganda. So this guy goes from an okay guy to this extremist. And this is very similar to what you see with McVeigh, with David Koresh. I mean, they go from trying to help people and they go and they flip the switch and become really bad, evil people. And at the end, a lot of people, once you're in these camps, you can't leave. It's very difficult. He doesn't let them leave. Some do defect and they tell these house of horror stories, what's going on. He has this medical camp, so your audience can know, where people will get injected with coma-inducing medication who are complaining and be used as sex slaves, right?
Yeah.
At the disposal. They had boa constrictors tie you down, wrap around your neck, and like make it look like an accident. You got killed in your bed or something happened type thing. You know, he would do, because the guy in the jungle out there, and they can just bring all these different things out there. They put you in hot boxes under the ground they built and put you in there and make sure you don't talk anymore. So this is the situation he created. He went from being a religious guy to being an absolute tyrant dictator who ends up killing his own followers because of his madness, his absolute lunacy. So these stories start getting out. So you have this Congressman Leo Ryan, who reads the local papers up there, and a lot of people, family members, are concerned. Hey, listen, we have family members that want to get out. They can't get out, and they're being, tortured pretty much out there. What can we do? Well, I think this is my opinion, which, hindsight's 2020, right, Wade?
Right.
But he had information from defectors that this guy was already testing the waters to do a mass so-called suicide, where they would have white night drills, where his guys are armed. They'll be having the people in the middle of the camp shooting above their heads with their weapons, scaring the daylights out of them. And he said, hey, it's time to go. It's time to go. Everybody's gonna be drinking this, cyanide, Kool-Aid cyanide, right? So he already had this programmed in them to do this mass killing already there. So he knows these guys are armed. He knows their bad situation. I don't think, as an elected official, I'm going to go out there without at least having the military involved or having some protection myself. Taking NBC News with me and entourage, I don't think it's good enough, because this guy's ultra paranoid already. He's already preparing for the worst. I think he thought, and that was a mistake made, and he brings staff members and everything else. He was just a little background on Leo Ryan. He would be I think the first and only Congress official we have in this country killed in a fact-finding mission like this. I don't think we've ever had anything like that happen again. And he was always proactive. I mean, he was a guy, William Bay's background, he's a World War II veteran. He was a guy that was in the San Francisco area. Those were his constituents. He was concerned. He would even go to like Canada, where there were seals getting clubbed, and try to save the seals from being clubbed from these people. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. He was out there. He even wanted to have a variety of other officials go with him. He even asked Dan Quayle, himself as a congressman. He said he was going to go, I was reading, but couldn't make it. He would have become future vice president with Bush Sr. So just think about that. Quayle could also have been assassinated there with this guy Leo Ryan and other people, and he wanted more people to come with him. Like I said, I don't know how you go in there knowing these guys are armed. You're going to antagonize this guy who's crazy paranoid, who's already preparing for the worst. What did they think was going to happen? What did they think was going to happen? It's just me, but I just wouldn't go like that approach, because the guy's already crazy. You would have to pretty much arrest him outside and try to take over the camp to save these people. Yeah. You just can't walk in there. So what he did, you saw the video. He goes in there and they start interviewing him, like saying, what's going on? And then they start getting these little notes from people saying, hey, we want to go with you. We want to leave this, right? This is getting crazy in here. And once that they're done, he realized 20 guys want to defect with him. Well, one of the guys who was loyal to him, what I call his Red Brigade, his goon squad, takes a knife, and you can see the video, and tries to stab him, right? Misses him like that. And one of the reporters, journalist from NBC News, says, hey, we got to get out of here now. This is about to get out of control. So they hop in the vans and they try to go to the tarmac while they're being followed, right? And they get there and the planes are there. And you see that the embassy cameraman's last action is, once the shooting starts, he starts recording it. That's the last thing he does. And you can see the video and they get lit up, right? These guys kill him. So you can watch the video out there. And some escape. And her name was Jackie Spear. She was his assistant. She survived, but playing dead. She was shot 5 times. Leo Ryan took a shot right to his face at the end. Boom, right? They killed him. Some escaped, but when his squad comes back and tell him, hey, listen, we couldn't kill them all. Some of them escaped. Then he realizes, we got to hurry. And he said, it's over. It is over. And you can see the video, and I don't know if you probably heard it, when his wife is protesting, and she doesn't want to kill her grandchildren, doesn't want to put the cyanide down their throat. And he goes, mother, please. Just like him. You can hear the tape, mother, please, mother, please. And he says, children, hurry. You got to hurry, my children. We're going to send a suicidal revolution and shock the world, but we're going to send a message. And he said, no one's loved you more than I have. Really? No one's loved you more? You're a fucking crazy psycho, man.
Yeah.
That's about to have them. No one's loved you more. And you can hear the screams in the background, the kids crying because they're raised pushing it was over 200 children that were killed. And that's killed. That's being murdered. And the people that protested, they didn't want to. Well, the guns on top of them, they're being surrounded. And a lot of them were injected. They were injected with the cyanide too. So I call that a mass murder because they had no option, no anything else like that. And it's a tragedy that it was taken. Someone in that kind of capacity had to be dealt with different. We don't learn our lessons because the same mistakes happens with David Koresh, the Branch Davidians, right? And a lot of problems happen with those Scientology, and people want to get out and they can't. So if you don't know much about Jim Jones, I wrote the book on that. I put it in back in that cults, killers, and mass murderers. You get a good feel for that one. That's also down the road. It's going to be on Audible. But Jim Jones, man, until 9/11, it was the worst mass murder of Americans until 9/11. So just think about that. It was over 900, and most of them were disenfranchised minorities.
Yeah.
They were taken advantage of, and he had millions of dollars. It was all about him, and he became a hardcore Marxist communist, and people turned their back about him.
Do you think that like that was his end game, or do you think that just became his plan along the way? Because like you said, it started out a little different with him, and it just kind of progressed and gotten bigger. It's I always wonder if these guys had an end game in sight, or if just the power and everything just kind of progressed over time.
I think you're right. The power, the control. I think he started becoming more and more, especially when he went from Indiana to San Francisco. I think it just triggered him from becoming maybe in the middle to being leftist to being a hardcore communist.
Right.
That guy became a hardcore, and he wanted to have complete control, like all these communists do. Xi Jinping, Fidel Castro, Nicolas Maduro. It's not real communism there. They're dictators, right? And they control. And that's the dangers of this cult, man. These guys do harm. They hurt you. They take your stuff. And he abused. He was physically. He was very abusive. There's no doubt. Very abusive guy. And at the end, when his own wife is pleading and he dismisses her like mother, please, mother, please. You can hear that record. It's like unbelievable. And they all go with it at the end. It was over, and he killed them all. You haven't seen those pictures. It's the front cover of my book there. Cults, Killers, and Mass Murderers. That's the aerial picture of Jim Jones when they came out there, and unbelievable. But it's quickly how at the time the vice president, the president, everybody said, "Well, I didn't really know him that well." Well, yeah, the mayor of San Francisco, yeah, they did, and yeah, he helped him win. Yes, he did, and it's amazing how that played out.
Yeah,
so
that happens a lot of times, man. You see like all these celebrities that knew and rubbed shoulders with Jeffrey Epstein, all of a sudden didn't know who he was and wanted to separate themselves really quick when all that come out.
That was a big story back in '78. That was 1978, November 1978, the Jim Jones Jonestown massacre. That's a big thing, especially younger generation doesn't know much about it. There's a lot of good video out there, shocking documentaries. If you want a quick little read, obviously my book I think fits that nicely.
Right. And that's we reference, drinking the Kool-Aid. When I was coming up, I would hear that phrase quite often. And that would usually come when someone say, well, so-and-so said this. And it's like, all right, go ahead and drink that Kool-Aid. That was to basically getting brainwashed by somebody that really didn't know what the hell they were talking about. I didn't kind of start putting those dots together until later on when you start researching that stuff on your own and you figure out
drinking the Kool-Aid. That's what we said in ATF headquarters, man. You go out there, man. Oh man, so and so's drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I heard that term thrown around quite a bit in my day for sure.
They started a lobotomy. They start your lobotomy early.
Another one we can get into, man, is Timothy McVeigh, because that's an interesting thing in and of itself. He was responsible for the Oklahoma City bombing. I think he's still incarcerated at the Colorado Supermax, if I'm not mistaken.
No, he was executed in 2001.
Oh, he was wow. Oh, who was that still there? Oh, I'm thinking of Ramsey Youssef.
Terry Nichols, his co-conspirator, still there.
Okay, Terry Nichols is still there. Ramsey Youssef was the one that was responsible for the first World Trade Center bombing, the one that only killed a small amount of people and blew up the parking lot. Remember the first attempt on it? That was Ramsey Youssef, because that Colorado Supermax housed the worst of the worst. I mean,
they do. El Chapo's there. We talked about that. El Chapo Guzman.
El Chapo Guzman, Barry Mills from the Aryan Brotherhood was there. Charles Harrelson, Woody Harrelson's father, was there. Ramsey Youssef was there. I think Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was
a lot of terrorists, big time gangsters, drug dealers. You think of them, they're there, and they're not escaping again. The Chapo's not escaping again.
was there.
Yeah, Kaczynski, yeah, the Unabomber. Yeah, he's in there too. McVeigh was there until he was executed in 2001. He gave up his appeals. And I'll give a little, how did, what influenced McVeigh? Because he was another guy, like this guy Jones was. He would have died, he would have been a civil rights hero. This guy would have been a Desert Storm hero himself. He was a decorated war veteran, Army veteran, right? McVeigh was. And how did he go from 1990? If he would died in the war, he would have been a patriot, right? And instead, 5 years later, he's the worst U.S. domestic terrorist ever. So, how do those things evolve? It just seems like what I was reading, what I was studying about this guy, looking at is that the clique he was with, because he would meet, and all these guys that did it were Army veteran guys, which is very, very shocking. Terry Nichols, he met in the military in the Army, and Michael Fortier, also he met in the Army. So all these guys were met in the Army, right? He got out, and he gets influenced by Ruby Ridge, and then he himself goes personally to the Waco standoff, right?
Yeah.
The siege that goes on in '93, and you can see the video of him there, which is a local reporter interviews him, right? And he's there. It becomes like a circus because you can get up on the ridge, you can see what's going on. You see the standoff, what's going on between. And if people don't know what happened at Waco with David Koresh, I'll talk about that. Obviously, ATF had warrants for David Koresh's arrest and search warrant because obviously he had allegedly had illegal firearms inside the compound, right? And this was outside of Waco, I think called Mount Carmel. He was inside there, and he got tipped off because a reporter heard about the siege is going to happen on that date, right, in late February, and he talked to a letter carrier and asked them, "Hey, do you know where this compound is? Has ATF already hit the house? I heard they have a warrant. They have a search warrant for it." Well, that guy happens to be his brother-in-law that he told that to. So then he tells them, "Hey, ATF's coming. Get ready." So rather than been a search warrant hitting out there where they weren't prepared for it, they all were prepared. They were all armed. So you're thinking, all right, who's this guy, David Koresh? He has the Branch Davidian. He himself been allegations of abuse against children, right? He's the only one that can sleep with anybody. If you brought your wife there, he's the only one that can sleep with your wife. You can't sleep with your wife anymore. He has the power control, right? He starts taking control, just all these guys do, right? And he's involved in these kind of things. So rather than saying, okay, ATF's coming, I want to cooperate, because he had a lot of children there, right? But no, they go to war. They go to war and they open up, and 4 ATF agents are murdered trying to execute this warrant from the SWAT team, and others are also hurt. They still had ammo, and ATF, we ran out of ammo, right? So there's a truce going on there to get the bodies out, drag them out of there, and then that's when the FBI comes in and they have the standoff and try to negotiate with him for 51 days until they go in there to try to save the kids to get them out. And they falsely were accused that they started the fire, but they can hear in their listening devices that they started the fire. You hear Koresh say, "Hey, they're coming, start the fire." He's the one that starts it, and he's the one that burns down his compound, and it's not the FBI, and it wasn't. So rather than cooperating at the end, just like the typical cults, they take down their followers with them because of the power control. At the end, I'm going to take your life too. When it's time, I'm also going to take your life. And that's a trend you're seeing there with this guy. And it's sad. You can see the videos and stuff. You can see the documents out there, congressional hearings were out there. And at the end, all the 70 some lose their lives. 70 some people lose their lives on this one.
And the weird thing is McVeigh, like you said, was there and was interviewed from outside.
Yeah. Yeah. He saw that. He said, this is what the government's doing. And he was selling anti-government. He became, he's a white nationalist, very anti-government. And he would travel the circuit at gun shows, and he would be selling the Turner Diaries. And it's a book out there, and people don't know what the Turner Diaries is. It's a book, and he copied it almost to the T. His MO was the same thing. Anti-government who want to overthrow the federal government, use a truck full of explosives to blow up the FBI headquarters. So he copies that, and he does it in the morning, just like they do. He copies everything from the Turner Diaries to the T and applies it to Oklahoma, the federal building. And who's there? ATF, right? He writes nasty letters against ATF. He goes nasty letters with other federal agents that were inside there. And at the end, he ends up parking it. And I'll tell you how he got there. He ends up parking it under a daycare center in the building, and walks away, gives himself 2 minutes, double fused, over 5,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, with other explosives, and complete takes out a good third of that building. And if you've seen that, crater it left there was 30-foot wide, 8 feet deep crater,
Yeah.
160 some people murdered. And he thought he was a patriot for doing it. No, you're a mass murderer, because he just got brainwashed. You talk about how, Jones got brainwashed with communism. He was obsessed after Waco. That triggered his event. That's why he picked the date that he picked, right? April 19th. 2 years later to the day, was to send a message because of what happened in Waco. And that's what he picked that day to do it. So, and it took him years. He had to steal for it. It took him over a year and a half. Michael Fortier helped him buy the explosives also in the conspiracy. You also have Fortier involved with helping him do surveillance. And he picked Oklahoma because they thought it was the easier target, because they looked at other failed buildings. They even thought about assassinating agents, judges, politicians, anybody they thought was were issue with the government, right? That were a problem for them. And he decided the most bang for his buck, so to speak, was to blow up the federal building, like what happened to Turner Diaries. So he copies that to the T, and that's something to look at. That's something but it's interesting what people think and how it's like you holding people accountable. Ruby Ridge, Randy Weaver was trying to be held accountable. If he cooperated, his wife would have been killed. Why did he shoot the marshal? Why are they killing 4 ATF agents, shooting up at him? Why not say he got a search warrant, comply? And when you challenge him, is in the system, right? If you think it's an unjust case, that's where the system, not to shoot and try, because that only things happen. And if McVeigh had so much beef, why is he doing that? And he ended up calling the death of those children collateral damage in his revolution. Well, no, it's no revolution. You're just a mass murderer. That's all he is.
Yeah, that's what I think gets me on some of these people when they claim themselves to be a patriot. At the end of the day, you're, like you said, you killed innocent kids. There was a daycare in that building that,
Yes.
they got taken out. A lot of people's kids got killed in there. I mean, it was just crazy. And what was he used fertilizer, right? That was what he used to help.
Yeah. AMFO, ammonium nitrate fertilizer, AMFO. Yeah.
Now, where did he get all that?
Yeah, they bought all different kinds of locations. It took them a while to find, and they had a storage unit that they would put everything in and start compiling everything, and then they would rent a truck. He had fake identification. They put a lot of thought and planning into this. It took them a while to do it, because remember, these guys didn't have high-paying jobs. McVeigh had issues keeping employment, right? He was very frustrated, angry. He did good in the Army, but then he had some issues there with some groups, and he wanted to be SF, Special Forces. He got washed out first week. That didn't work out for him. So a lot of frustration, a lot of built up anger issues, and then he sees these events, and people get brainwashed. He said a lot. What changed him a lot was going on the gun show circuit, and especially traveling west and dealing with a lot of people who were anti-government and white nationals, and all the stuff, the propaganda they fed on him and everything else. And of course, the Turner Diary, you read that a lot, and that's one of the stuff you're selling a lot. Well, that's a recipe for a domestic terrorist.
Yeah, and wasn't the van that they were, was a Ryder?
Ryder, yeah, rental truck, yeah.
Okay, that was a key component into how they actually caught them, right?
Yeah, they're able to, and in the same with the World Trade Center also. they're able to get the right now I can't skip the name of the part. They pulled up and they had the serial number on it, and they're able to track it where it was rented. So yeah, the axle right there. So they're able to track it down. That was important. There was a lot of video in the area. Was important. They had that sketch, and he made a bonehead mistake where the car that he parked 2 days earlier, didn't have a tag on it, right? So he's driving a car with no tag. He just committed the worst domestic terrorist act in U.S. history. He gets pulled over 90 minutes later by Oklahoma State Trooper for not having a tag in his vehicle. He notices that he has a weapon in his waistband. So he had a legal weapon, concealed weapon. He gets arrested for that. And when the sketches start coming out, he's almost released on that charge until they realize, hey, this is him. Because they look at the sketch, because people had, they interviewed some people he stayed at, the cameras and everything else. And he gets arrested by the FBI and come in there. So very close. And then they got a search warrant. They go later to see where They arrest Terry Nichols. He gets life. McVeigh gets death penalty. Nichols came very close in Oklahoma in getting the death penalty. He was deadlocked, very close to getting the death penalty. Terry Nichols did. So he's doing life imprisonment.
What was the jury split on? Just the death penalty for him? Why was it
Yeah,
done for McVeigh and not for him?
I guess because he drove it, right? But
Yeah.
it's a conspiracy, the equal weight, right? He knew about it. He didn't stop it. He should have been executed, but now taxpayers have to pay from the rest of his life, to eat and all that, and all other stuff, healthcare and everything else that comes with it. Just like some of the other notorious criminals, now, and that's like when we talked about with Mexico, El Chapo. Now we got them, and we got to take care of them. They couldn't take care of their problem. Now we got to pay for it. It's our expense.
And a lot of times, when you have these incidences like this, it's followed up with conspiracy theories. I haven't heard many about Oklahoma City. I've heard a few float around, but none of them really that I can say probably hold a lot of water. Have you heard any wild conspiracy theories involving Oklahoma City?
Well, it was a conspiracy, no doubt, but
Yeah.
more people involved. I mean, and also Michael Fortier, he's out and about. He's in the witness protection program, and he helped McVeigh. What I was reading, what's in the affidavits and reports, that he helped do surveillance to pick Oklahoma Federal Building, and his wife, who I guess part of his cooperation testifying against these two, was not going to be prosecuted because she helped put his fake ID together, identification card together. So she wasn't prosecuted. But he's in the witness protection program. A lot of people think that guy should never got out either.
Yeah.
But you got to pick and choose. Those two were involved, and McVeigh at the end did a lot of interviews. If you want to see some of his interviews, what he says, it's pretty shocking. A guy who was raised here, is in the Army, decorated veteran, and he goes from that to being a domestic terrorist. And that's why I call Timothy McVeigh the face of domestic terrorism, no doubt.
Absolutely. I mean, what can possibly wander into these people's minds by either looking at the stuff of Waco or whatever? I don't really rationalize it. There's a quote off of I think it's that movie The Rock. You ever see The Rock with Sean Connery?
Yeah, sure.
So when he's talking with I think it's Ed Harris, who's the guy that took over Alcatraz. And there's a point in there when Sean Connery is talking to him and he said, I can hardly see the point by you cherishing the memory of the dead by killing another million. And that's essentially what a lot of these people are doing is, they maybe want it for a cause, but you're killing a lot of innocent people for it. And it doesn't make rational sense in pretty much all cases, to be honest.
You can almost compare it to what happened a couple of years ago at the Capitol building.
Yeah.
The storming out there doesn't justify injustice, violence anytime. And those Capitol police officers were murdered, right? Yep. At the end, they were murdered. A lot of people are doing a lot of time. They're doing a lot of time in their session, right? Treason behavior, storming the building. So, it's history tends to repeat itself, no doubt about it. And you just keep on seeing the cycle. And it's like mass shootings. We talked about that. We saw the one in Texas, right? It's always another one. And what we can do to stop it, we're going to stop it. Guns are going away. You just have to deal with people with mental health issues and what we can do about it. So,
right, that's my biggest thing is I think definitely needs to be something implemented in the way of some sort of psych evaluations or something like that to be able to own that. And that's not going to stop it all, period, because someone that wants to get it can still maybe steal one or buy one off the street. I mean, you're not going to be able to end
stop
this
that
problem. You can't stop it. That's what I'm saying. People want to say you want to pass this law, that law. That's great. You pass the laws. That's not going to stop shit because the people want to get a gun to do whatever, they're going to get it. Is that the one that just happened at the outlets where I think like 7
in Texas, the mall.
Killed?
Yeah. Happened. Lucky there was an officer happened to be there.
Yeah, that's what I was reading.
Worse. Yeah, it could have been a lot worse.
What was the school not so long ago? You seen the body cam footage from the officers in there and kill that guy from the school. A lot better response than the one you got from a while back. Was that in Texas?
Uvalde, Texas. Yeah. Yes. Robb Elementary. That was a horrible response. So we talked about that. We had to show on that one.
Yeah.
77 minutes. That was disgusting and horrible. And the one in Nashville, that was the first one I can remember being transgender.
Yeah.
She was a female. They wanted to be a male, right? And she was an alumni from the school.
Yeah.
and she targeted, and you hate to see, keep on seeing the schools over and over again. The first ones to go are the principals, trying to save their children, and the principal gets executed, gets killed. Class, you have 3 9-year-olds gets killed. I mean, it's just, but at least they responded, they did their job, unlike in Parkland, where the Broward County Sheriff's Office resource officer stayed outside. They went inside, or Robb Elementary, they go in there and they take care of the guy. Or at the bank in Louisville, that's another
Yeah.
one they acted pretty quickly. They did a
Mhm.
very good job on that. So when you do a
It's a
good job, that's
shame.
great.
It's a shame that we have to, you know, say that that is progress, only a smaller number of people killed. It's really a
That's right.
shame that we have to look at it in that aspect. But at the end of the day, that is what's, what
That's it.
the
Body
case
count.
is. And, because my wife works at a school. And so,
Mhm.
a lot of times that makes me nervous if this kind of stuff happens. I don't know how there couldn't be something put into some sort of budget where at least the glass is bulletproof in some of these schools. At least the doors or something is bulletproof. I don't know how that can't be implemented.
Yeah.
You know,
Budget or security force, right? And we
yeah, I
talked
mean
about that.
it is literally the future of our, nation that we're
Country.
trying to protect here. And I think with all the money that is just dumbly wasted and spent on ignorant bullshit, we can definitely probably get some to go in the way of either beefed up security or definitely because
Yeah.
obviously you can't guard every door of a school and you have to have multiple exits due to the fact if there's a fire or something along those lines. But I definitely think you can do something in the way of some bulletproof glass because that was you seen what he did in the I think that was the Nashville when he just broke through the
That's when they
glass.
shot the shot, just shot right through it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Shot right through it. And also in Connecticut, also that happened the same thing. They shoot right through the glass right there in Sandy Hook. Yeah, school security has to be beefed up, or some teachers that can be armed, or faculty members.
that was
We talked about
actually going
that.
to be my next statement. What do you think, and where are you at right
I
now
agree.
on teachers? I don't think
Sure.
every teacher should be able to have a weapon.
No,
I don't think you
no.
need to put it in every teacher's hands, but I think teachers that want to maybe take the extra training and that
Yes.
responsibility can go through proper classes, proper training, have that. I definitely think multiple around the school. You don't just need just one. I do think you need more than that. But have that gun securely locked up away. The kids don't even know it's there. They don't have a
Right.
clue it's there. And that teacher maybe even be the only one that knows that combination. That way
That's true.
they would have to be the one to get it out if something happened.
Yeah, I
And
like that.
if that happens, then you have multiple teachers that are able to go out there and maybe take care of business if need be. Because let's be honest, your first line of defense is going to be the people in that building, and they're usually not going to be armed. That's why these people pick these places because it's a bunch of innocent people that are probably scared to
Soft.
death because they're at school, and they're going to be terrified. And nobody's
No, I agree.
odds of nobody there being armed other than maybe your school resource officer, whom if you go in and take him out immediately, then you really don't have any threat to worry about until the police get there. And that's usually what, in the best case, 7, 8 minutes. So you think of how long 7 or 8 minutes is of
That's a
somebody
long
in a
time.
school with a machine gun. You think of how much damage that can be done.
Yeah,
Even
and they
handguns.
do a lot of damage. They do a lot of damage, and they pick those targets, and they have those issues. But no, I agree. Just like we did with the pilots after 9/11, right? In the cockpit,
Yeah.
right? Pilots that want to be armed, they had the courses, the training. Most of them were prior either military or law enforcement, or wanted to, or gun enthusiasts. There's plenty of those who are National Guard, who go reservists, who have the training, who want to carry. They should be in every school. You have one or two just like that. Give them the opportunity to be armed, to work out, to do what I have to do, and be ready. And you have to have the mindset when the shit hits the fan, you gotta be ready to go.
Right. And I think people would like to be honest with themselves. If something like this happens, would they be able to, react under pressure the right way? A lot of people would probably be honest and say no. But like you said, I think you're going to have your ex-military,
Yeah,
possibly ex-law enforcement. A lot of those guys go on to be, teachers or gym teachers and football coaches, people that have a background in that. And I think they would jump at that opportunity, maybe even put some sort of an incentive there if they take on that responsibility. I mean,
yeah.
obviously not a ton, but I mean, just a little bit more of an incentive for them to hold that weight, because then they would be looked upon to, help out in that situation. So I think that's definitely something that needs to be done for sure.
No,
Cause
I
we've got to
agree.
do
I agree.
something.
And then maybe we have to take it to another level with these malls and theaters and stuff for maybe you're the owner of a business, maybe take some responsibility and say maybe I should pay a little more to have peace of mind to have security, armed security, or off-duty police officers there, right?
Yeah. Because I mean
Things we all
that's
should
the
consider.
thing, man. These guys pick these places to where they can inflict the most damage and gonna incite the most panic. Because you got to think there's only typically one outside of the rampway into a theater. There's maybe one other exit in that theater. So anybody at the top is screwed.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're in
yeah,
bad shape.
yeah,
You're in bad shape. And a lot of these places, especially in the blue state areas, they don't want you armed in their facilities, right?
right.
And their location. So they know that. They pick him, they hit him hard, and they go in there. So you
If
would
you're
like to
a
have at least one
gunman,
police officer.
if you're a gunman and you're going in somewhere to do whatever for whatever batshit crazy reason you've got it in your head you want to do, you're gonna pick a place that says, "Oh, this place doesn't allow guns. I'll be able to do the most damage here." I mean, you
Mhm.
almost put a target on your back by putting those fucking signs up. Is what you're doing.
You do. No guns allowed, private property, and that's bad news because that then they're and then they look around and there's no security. Oh wow, that's even better.
Yeah,
Means that means if you do carry a gun, you might cop a felony. You don't want that. You live in your car, you're gonna have enough time to chase in the car. No, what good is that gonna be for you?
yeah.
Useless, useless, stupid. And then those are the issues we have to combat in our country, dealing with those kind of it's not the gun, it's the people. That's what's between the ears. That's the problem.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And people really need to also educate themselves on the gun laws from state to state because I
Yeah,
mean, if you do a lot of traveling and driving, truck drivers, whatever the case may be, like we mentioned earlier, some states aren't as lenient as others for having
they're
them.
not.
Like, what I can get away with here in South Carolina now that I finally have all my guns back, you might can't get away with in other states.
In New York City. You can't do it in New
Yeah.
York City.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Chicago, California, just to name a few.
And the two you've named, think of how many murders happen there with guns every day. Just those two or three states you've named, how many murders happen there with things you're not supposed to have. So that ought to
Yeah,
let you know right there, people don't really give too much of a damn about any law. And that's just point blank.
gun-free zones don't work. That's a fact. That's just absolute nonsense. But they think by banning all guns on paper, the Canadians are trying to do it, but they're having a huge amount of guns. We were cases being trafficked to Canada because of huge demand, and they're becoming just like we are. Toronto is like any other American city. Vancouver, I mean, it's getting gang infested. Violence is getting higher. They have the one percenters too.
Yep.
They have the Hells Angels and the other biker groups. They have the mafia. They have everything, and it's smaller population, and their violence is getting higher, and a lot of guns going over there too. So you can ban it. And that's what Trudeau wants. He wants to ban all the guns. Well, it's still not going to stop the violence at all. In fact, it's going to victimize, like in these blue states, victimize people. So
I did want to touch on Scientology real quick before we wrap this episode up. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about Scientology. It's never one of those things I study, but the stuff that I have heard on it hadn't been the most pleasant. You want to give it because I actually, when I was down there in Tampa, don't they have like a head down there?
Clearwater. Yeah,
Clearwater.
Clearwater and Pinellas have headquarters out there. Yeah,
That
they got
place looked
headquarters all over.
fucking massive, man. When I drove by it, I asked that guy,
Yeah,
I was like, "What hotel is that?" He's like, "Ain't a hotel, man." He's like, "That's the head of Scientology." I was like, "Whoa!" I mean, that
yeah. You can
place
see those guys. They,
massive.
they got the uniform. Looks like the guys from the Navy, right? They're walking around khaki pants and everything else. And yeah, it's Scientology. You look at some of these big names. I mean, you think of John Travolta. You think of Tom Cruise, Juliette Lewis, and you're seeing all these people involved in it. And then you see a lot of people who leave and talk about these horror stories. Separation and disconnection with family and policy and everything else going on. Who founded it? I wrote a book. It's called "How Dangerous of a Cult Is Scientology," right? And I put in a mixture in there, and the founder, L. Ron Hubbard, Lafayette, Ron Hubbard, that's his name, Lafayette, and he was in the Navy in the 40s, right? And I'll give a little background on him. He also was kind of had some odd situations, a lot of health issues. He dropped out of high school. His father was a Navy officer, right? And he when he dropped out of high school in Montana, he was in, I think, Billings, Montana. He went to Guam. He explored the Asia area. Ended up getting married 3 times with 7 kids. married 3 times, 7 kids. He joined the Navy because he was failing a lot of stuff. He was a frustrated fiction writer. He's a pulp fiction writer. Remember that? Pulp fiction. That's what he became good at. He was a writer. Disastrous, his career in the Navy, very short-lived. He came in as an officer. He became the commander of a enemy submarine chaser, right, during that time. And just 1 month in, I guess like a few days in, he was chasing a phantom enemy submarine that wasn't there. He had his team there for about like 72 hours. They called him off, said, "We don't see anything out there. I don't know what you're chasing. I don't know what's going on out there. Call it off." A few weeks later, in the Coronado Islands, which is off of part of Mexico, he thought it was U.S. territory. It belongs to Mexico, and he was doing war exercises on there. He caused an international incident. He was relieved of his command soon after that. So this is the guy that will write Dianetics, right? Which a lot of those in the psychology, industry said he was complete quack, complete nonsense, right? And he would end up making a religion out of it, would turn to Scientology, right? And again, the same theme again, taking advantage of people who are looking for some spiritual guidance, maybe, we're looking for other answers in life, right? The weak and vulnerable, and pretty much made it a business for profit kind of thing, because he was told that religion is a good way to make money, and he was hurting for money. He had 7 kids, right? So he needs to figure out a racket to make money, and he did. Scientology makes a lot of money, and they recruit high-end people. I just mentioned a few names right there, but other people who left. You had Riney, Leah Remini. She did that TV show. She came out, and her family, half of them still stayed there. I mean, if you want to leave Scientology, they have a disconnection policy. They don't want any naysayers against their ideas or their vision. Well, they have this, what they call an e-meter, right? To determine what your so-called secrets are. So I think they can use it against you.
Yeah, more like Leah Rim. That's she was star of King of Queens, right?
King of Queens. Yeah, she wrote an interesting book, how she got out of Scientology. If you want to get a little bit inside what she was saying, which was fascinating, she and some family, she was raised in it, and she got out of it. Yeah,
It's been around for that long. How long has Scientology been around? Because it's, I don't want to say
50s
recently,
and
because
60s.
it's not recently, but it was probably maybe when Tom Cruise became a big advocate. It was the first time I really started hearing about it.
Yeah, no, it's been around for a long time. It's been around from the 50s, 60s. And
Wow.
and then Elvis Presley, they're trying to recruit him back in the day. And he said, these guys just trying to, take my money.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Lisa Marie Presley was raised in it when he separated with Priscilla. And I don't know, she recently died, but she also, was raised with Scientology mentality. And Christopher Reeve from Superman, he was in it for a little bit. He got out. Tom Berenger, he was in it. He got out. I mean, you look at the list out there, who's who, it's enormous. It's enormous. And then they had this operation. I touch a little bit. It's a lot there in my book, but I'm just touching this story here. And then people can do their own research. Operation Snow White, where they have one of the biggest infiltration of the U.S. government committed by Scientologists going into the IRS, into DEA. These are people who are applying for jobs to find out, because they were obsessed with their tax exempt status, because it was trying to be taken away from them. But a lot of people don't see this as a true religion, but a business for profit that uses religion, because you got to pay a lot. Every level you got to pay to make money. You got to get this knowledge. You got to pay. So it really, really, and he was an unindicted co-conspirator back in the late 70s. His wife and 5 other high-ranking members were charged and convicted of conspiracy charges. So think about that. He was indicted and convicted out of France for violations over there, because this became international. And he had some issues. He was never extradited because he hid, but he was also, so he traveled a lot also. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. If you don't know about Scientology, look into it. And any organization that requires, they've been also accused of excessive labor law violations. They put a lot of their people to work excessive, abusive hours, separate families. You got to put a lot of money into the whole thing. And it's hard to get out. Anything that makes it impossible for you to get out, there's a problem there. So a lot of good information there you can read about Scientology and what they're about. But that's another one there. How dangerous they're called. They're very dangerous. Obsessed with making money. They run like a franchise, and they only care about the top, like a pyramid scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people pump a lot of money in. They don't get a lot out of it. They lose a lot, include their family. That's how I see them.
Well, they're damn sure making money because if anybody's ever been around that Clearwater area and
Yeah.
seen that building that I'm talking about, it is. I'll try to see if I can't find it in my photo reel because I took some pictures of it the best I could and stick
Oh yeah,
it in this
put it
episode.
out there. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of stuff out there, and you should see what they have recruiting in Los Angeles for celebrities. Unbelievable what they bring in. I mean, and you got to put. I mean, Tom Cruise. It's out there that allegedly he's worth over 600 million, and allegedly, so you at least put 10% of your income. So from Tom Cruise alone, are they getting 60 million? Wow.
Well, and
John Travolta.
it's like everything else too. If they can hook the celebrities, then they know other people will follow.
And the question is, how are they keeping these kind of guys?
Yeah.
What's going on there? What I mean, the psychometer that they use everybody to get your dirty secrets. It's all reeks, man, all reeks. And they've also been out for abuses and allegation of abuses going on there too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff out there, folks. You read about it. Don't ever throw your faith in anything. Question, question, question everything. Anything that requires you to hand over all your assets to them, that's not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Don't ever let anybody take control of your life.
Even knowing all your secrets. I mean, there's some things that's better kept between you and other parties. When you have your secrets there, then basically anybody can have you over a barrel. Even if you decide
They
to
will.
leave, you can still be up under the thumb. So interesting stuff here, man. Ignacio, it's always a pleasure having you on the show,
Yeah,
man.
bro. No, enjoy it, Wade. I enjoy it, man. Anytime.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am Hollywood Wade. That was Ignacio Esteban. And unfortunately, we are out of time. I'll put links to all the show notes for his books up on. I just put his author page. I can't put every book. It'll be, a mile long. I think we have a character limit, but I'll just put it right straight to his Amazon page. You can go through there. Ton of great stuff he's got. He's pumping out books left and right. And I'm sure if you got anything on the horizon before we get out of here, what's your next book you're working on? I know you got something cooking.
Oh, I always got something working on for sure. I'm working on a book on serial killers called Psycho Killers. I just finished writing the first two chapters. It's gonna be a lot longer book. This one I did Bundy and Dahmer. Now I'm working on John Wayne Gacy, and then I didn't know a lot. I knew some of it, but man, I am finding out some really sick. It's gonna be a really fascinating show. I have quite a few people interested in bringing me on talk, but I'll be more happy to really do a deep dive on these serial killers and their mindset and what some of the sick things these guys are and how many close calls they had getting arrested early that made us save a lot of it. Bundy's number is unknown. They think it's over 30 plus. Dahmer, he confessed to 17, but he was so sick what he did to his victims. It's just unbelievable what he did. And then of course the killer clown himself, John Wayne Gacy, the guy who was a franchise manager of 3 KFCs that becomes this prolific killer of young boys and men. Unbelievable stuff there. Unbelievable from the Midwest.
When you start diving into them serial killers, man, that's a whole nother rabbit hole altogether. And I would definitely
Yes.
love to have you on the show and we can do whole deep dives on those guys, man. Ted Bundy, Dahmer, Gacy. I mean, there's a bunch of them. Have you ever heard of a guy by the name of Pee Wee Gaskin?
I've heard of it. I don't know much.
Okay, so I don't know if I have that book handy. It's somewhere around here. He was from my area, like literally the area where I'm living at now. He would pick up hitchhikers, stoners, whatever. He would kill them and sink them in like marsh swampland. And that's why they never found a lot of the bodies. Horrible guy. His name was Pee Wee Gaskins. He got that nickname because he was real short, killed people in prison. At least at the time when that book was written, was one of the only people to kill somebody on death row. Like he gave the guy a radio. Somehow they had a bomb hooked to it. And when the guy turned the radio on, it blew half his head off. I mean, just a brutal guy.
Wow.
I forgot his exact height, so I don't want to say it and be wrong, but he was really short, but I mean, killed a lot of people. And he's another one that nobody really knows the number. He was using that number to get out of jail. Like, say, okay, every time it was fixing to come to trial, he would talk about another victim. He would get to go out and, usually they would find him. And it started getting to the end to where, he couldn't really tell them exactly where it was at. He would say, oh, well, things are different and so much has grown up. And they just decided, you know what? It doesn't matter. We got you. You're getting done. And he wound up going to the electric chair and they wrote a book called The Final Truth. And the book is hard to find. It is very hard to find. I read that book when I was probably like 15 years old. really, I might even been younger than that. I was way too young to read that book, man. I couldn't even really comprehend some of the brutality that went on in that
Oh,
book.
it's horrible.
Yeah, and I wound up getting his daughter, I think, put it back into print maybe around like 2000, 99, 2000, 2001, somewhere along in there. And I got a cover of it, or I got a copy of it. And then it was immediately took out of print. So, I mean, like it's going online sometimes right now for upwards of $1,000. That's just how rare
Wow.
that the book is. But yeah, he's an interesting one that not a lot of people heard about because I don't know if it was just because it was South Carolina and it wasn't in a huge city, but yeah, he killed a lot of people, man. Really brutal. And then also we spoke earlier, a guy that shocks a lot of people when I start talking to him about it is Charles Harrelson, Woody Harrelson's dad, and all the stuff that he was
Oh,
in.
yeah. No, there's a lot. I have my list that it's gonna be 12, but I'm probably do like a two or three, part two, part three, because there's so many I'm looking at. I'll have some of the big names. I'm also gonna put in H. Holmes.
Oh yeah,
Obviously, yeah, Jack the Ripper. Obviously, a lot of people think there's multiple Jack the Rippers, and then one of them came over to Chicago and continued. So there's a lot of stuff
yeah. There's a
in
lot
there.
of that. Those two are one and the same as
Right.
that I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do some deep diving. I'm gonna find out what's out there. I'm gonna do some more digging, more reading about that. So all those are in there. Pedro Lopez, sick guy from South America. Wow, and I think his numbers is over 300 that he was killing peasant girls and horrible things. And then the Colombian government let him go. And a lot of people, I mean, don't know if he's still alive or not. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just sick. I mean, the amount of people I was reading there. How about Richard Ramirez from Los
There
Angeles?
it is. Yep.
That's I mean, so I'm gonna have really 12 good ones. I've just finished the first two. It's going to probably take me another month or so because I'm really getting into the books and their history and writing out there. But that's going to be good. That's going to be Psycho Killers. And if anybody out there is from the UK or even the US that wants, I got some free credits for ATF Undercover. If you want to reach out to me either through Facebook or let me see what other ways they can reach out. Facebook's probably easier way. Ignacio Esteban. If they reach out to you, that's fine too. Let them know, and I can send it to them, and they can listen to it too, and let me know what they think. Hopefully, people leave me some good reviews. I got a few more coming.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good, man, for sure. If anybody's interested in a credit for ATF Undercover, hit me up. I'll get Ignacio on
Okay.
the horn. Let him know. We'll get that over to you. As again, man, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. You got an open invite and definitely want to get you back on here to talk on some serial killers. That's always a hot
Oh
topic.
man, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. That'll be shocking and fun. All right, man.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Hollywood Wade. That was Ignacio Esteban. And unfortunately, we are out of time. Tune in next week for an all new episode of Crime and Entertainment. Ignacio, we'll see you, my friend.
All right, brother. See you, man.